Amherst has for a long time been a community that people choose because of the education. And I'd hate to see us lose that advantage of attracting community members because our schools are not where they should be.
My children got a great education in Amherst, but it was really in spite of the infrastructure, not because of it. In the 90s, some of these schools were even sort of thought of as sick schools, and we don't want our children and our teachers to be in that environment.
Well, both Fort River and Wildwood were designed at a time that the fad in school architecture was open classrooms or open design. And in our case, it looked like a very large room that occupied the space of 4 classrooms with no walls separating them.
So last year, my son was a kindergartner. It was my first experience in the Amherst Public Schools, my first experience with Fort River. And thankfully, the kindergarten classrooms were a little bit more enclosed. So I didn't see that open classroom design until Halloween when I walked through with my son's class. I was struck by just how overstimulating that environment was. The visual clutter of boxes piled all over, narrow hallways to get in between the classrooms, the makeshift walls, the dividers that teachers had tried to use to carve out their individual spaces for their classrooms, the noise level of kids in different classrooms being able to hear each other.
On a typical day, I can tell you that if I'm teaching math and the 4th grade next door follows essentially the same schedule, when I'm teaching, I can hear most of the math lesson coming from next door. And for some students, they can filter out the ambient noise, but for many, that's quite a challenge.
I think it's really important as we look to the future to build structures that have the kind of lighting, the kind of energy efficiency, the kind of air quality that we want for the children and the staff of the future. We have a great opportunity here in Amherst with the state matching grant to really redevelop our school infrastructure in a way that works for us moving forward rather than reinvesting in buildings that only barely met our requirements in the past.
I would vote yes for the schools because we need the schools, but I also am very convinced that that the plan, the proposal, is a very creative solution to having the problem of 2 schools that need to be replaced when we could only get funding for 1.
Now that we have that funding, it would really be a tragedy to lose it.
We shouldn't be putting good money after bad into these old structures that were not really adequate when my children attended them in 1990.
We have 2 separate schools, and yet they come together and they can join resources. I think it's a very imaginative plan that I can get behind.
So I think this really is the most fiscally responsible plan moving forward.
Another important thing is just thinking about how healthy schools, how that physical environment is going to affect students' motivation and achievement and teachers' motivation and achievement. So if we can have this strong foundation in place of healthy schools, safe schools with adequate facilities, it's going to help teachers and students build strong relationships and also help them, ultimately take the risks that are necessary for learning.
The New Schools project will also offer us an opportunity to have every child in town have access to the same resources as every other child in town without having to bus kids around town to create balance in our schools.
I know Amherst and I myself am really committed to social justice, and I think everyone would agree that socioeconomic integration is a priority, and this is a way to do it in a sustainable way.
Equity begins with access.
A lot of people who are on fixed incomes have worries about increase in taxes that would then eat into their already limited amount of resources. And then there are people who say, is this really, really, really necessary? Can we not do it? We must realize that these are our kids. They did not ask to be here in Amherst. These are our kids. These are our kids. We do not need to have them in second-rate and poorly ventilated schools with bad water and in a poor learning environment. These are our kids. And I do not know of any family who does not want the best for their kids. This is it.